Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you may happen to find yourself in the world. I am so excited to be back here on my platform. As many of you may know, my name is Simone Smart, and I started this YouTube channel, coming up 6, maybe 7 years ago. Started from a position of pain, um, which I decided to turn into purpose. So many, many moons ago, decades, in fact ago, I used to suffer with a very debilitating condition known as endometriosis. And long story short, I talk about this in an anthology book, which was published back in 2021. And I've also shared my story over several podcasts on this very platform, where I went from living a relatively normal life to realizing one day that something wasn't quite right with my health. And unfortunately, going through a bit of a saga, if you like, with the medical professionals who didn't quite understand what was going on, and eventually having lots and lots of operations, sadly suffering a lot of complications from those operations, only to be told by the doctors that actually they don't really have a cure for the illness, and I was to just try to manage the pain with painkillers for the rest of my life. Now, that didn't sit very well with me, and I decided to go on a quest to figure out answers and get a solution. And that was how I came across natural remedies. And once I was able to successfully use those natural remedies to effectively reverse all the condition, all the symptoms, I decided that I couldn't keep this knowledge to myself. I had to share it because it's actually a condition that affects 1 in 10 women in the UK. And that was how the platform came about. So I decided to set up a space where I could empower, share, connect, inform, and edify. Hence the title of the platform, the ESKI channel. And of course, it's grown since then. It's evolved. I don't just discuss health matters and, challenging medical issues. I use the platform now as a space where I can engage with interesting individuals that I may happen to come across, in life, virtually and in person, which brings us nicely on to our topic today and our guest in the house, Mr. Johnny Muteba. Johnny, welcome.
Thank you so much, Simone, for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Since you and I met 2 years ago, your life has been an inspiration to me and also to the team within the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce. So when we spoke about having this interview, I got excited, and that's why I'm here. So it is always good to talk to you.
Amazing. Johnny, I have to say it's a true honor to be doing this podcast with you. I'm really, really looking forward to hearing the many nuggets that you're no doubt going to share with us.
Most definitely.
What I'm going to do very briefly, Johnny, is just quickly read out your bio, just so viewers have an understanding about who you are, and hopefully be able to expound on that once we start the interview.
Sure.
So, Johnny Muteba founded the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce in 2015 in Johannesburg, South Africa. He has over 20 years of work experience in media, entertainment, entrepreneurship, trade, social impact, and human rights. He is a global thought leader with a proven track record to lead multicultural teams and deliver outstanding results, and has an in-depth understanding of business networking, negotiations, relationships, and project management. Johnny is the CEO of Johnny is the CEO of Build Africa Group, an infrastructure development company working at the intersection of decent, innovative, affordable, and quality housing with a mission to inspire to build a better Africa. His enthusiasm and experience provide for compelling insights, interesting ideas, and refreshing approaches which are so desperately needed today. Johnny offers a broad range of professional services to artists, corporations, universities, and governments. Across all that he does, he taps into the power of creativity to innovate lives, bottom lines, organizations, and the communities which sustain us all. His life mission is to disrupt injustice, challenge inequality, and inspire an ambitious vision of what Africa can be. He's a member of the Small Business Institute, South Africa, that he represents at NEDLAC, and that's the National Economic Development and Labour Council, and has served in 2019 as a member of the World Trade Organization, International Chamber of Commerce Committee on Medium and Small Enterprises. Johnny is also the president of Blacks in Technology South Africa, country lead for the Atlanta Black Chambers of Commerce, founder of the Pan-African Music Awards and the Hollywood African Film Festival. Johnny, once again, thank you and welcome to my platform.
Thank you so much. It is great to be here.
Let us just briefly start out. Johnny, I want you to please, viewers, having heard that introduction, must be thinking, whoa, can't even wrap our heads around the first paragraph. Johnny, the genesis of Johnny, where did it all start for you? Where did life start? And, just tell us the vision.
So my vision, really my journey started actually in Congo, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's where I am from. That's where I was born. And I came to South Africa more than 25 years ago. So I actually grew up here in South Africa. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, but I've also worked in government, worked for the city of Johannesburg, primarily for about 10 years or so. My job at the city was to fight for the integration of refugees and migrants in the fabric of the South African society. Just to give context, Johannesburg is the richest city on the African continent. Therefore, it has the pull factors to attract people from all across the continent, from Congo, from Nigeria, from Ghana, from the Gambia, literally from all over the world, including, of course, people coming from Europe, North America, Asia, and the likes. So when you've got so many people from all over the place convening into one particular city, there's, of course, those who are contesting for spaces, who think an outsider cannot belong. That is basically what I was doing, working with the city of Johannesburg, to make sure that refugees and migrants have access to services that are available. For example, accessing healthcare facilities, quality education for their children, safety and security as well. Because some people, because they are undocumented, find themselves actually harassed by the police who want money, to extort money from them. So this is basically the bulk of the work that I've done. But as an entrepreneur, I have done so many businesses. I remember one of my first businesses was actually a clothing store where I would buy clothes from Johannesburg to go to a province here in South Africa called the Eastern Cape, which is around about 800, 900 kilometers. Mm-hmm. So I'd actually come and buy clothes here, go and sell over there. And over the years, basically, my businesses have changed primarily from, selling of clothes to tourism, hospitality, but also to technology innovation. The Pan-African Chamber of Commerce that I started 11 years ago came by accident because on Africa Day in 2010, I had organized a conference here called the Africa Day Festival. So the festival started with a lecture, the Africa Day lecture. So to cut a long story short, we had so many students from across the continent studying in South Africa. They presented a problem. The problem was that when they finished studying here, it is very difficult for them to gain work experience. And because they cannot gain work experience, they are unemployable, even if they decide to go back home, whether that home is Zimbabwe, next door, or Botswana, or they stay in South Africa. So everything that I've done has always been about finding a solution. That's why the people that I mentor, I say to them, don't talk about the services your company provide. You need to speak about the problems that you're solving. So I've been solving these problems over and over again. In a continent like this, I believe that we are blessed with problems because the more problems you have, the more innovative actually you'll become. So I don't see that as actually as a challenge. I see that as an amazing opportunity. I just need to bring innovators who need to change the way they look at Africa. Because when you change the way you look at something, the very thing you look at will change. That is what has been basically driving me. But on top of that also, Simone, I believe that our power as Africans at home and people of African descent all over the globe, our power lies in our ability to unite because there is strength in unity. So every single time, tirelessly, I aim to always bring people together socially, bring people together culturally, bring people together politically, so that we can ignite an economic transformation in Africa. So at the core of what I do is my undying love for Africa, but also the fact that I am always optimistic about the future of our continent.
Wow, 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 wow. Johnny, I'm curious though. So clearly a Pan-Africanist, and you talk about your love for Africa. I just want to understand briefly what took you from the Congo to South Africa. What was that driving force, and what was it you were doing at the time that you felt maybe better achieved in South Africa?
So Congo has been unstable for a very long time. Actually, it's more than 30 years now. So when you have a country that is going through a war, a lot of other things are actually affected. So if you go and study, you finish, you need to find a job or you need to start your own business. But when there's instability in the nation for such a long time, it makes it very difficult for anybody to thrive. I've always been an entrepreneur. I started traveling when I was very small, going into neighboring countries with my limited knowledge of English at the time, buying things in Zambia, selling in Congo. But South Africa was always presented to us as the best on the continent, right? We have the US, we've got Europe, but from an African perspective, we all wanted to come to South Africa because of the way South Africa was packaged, because of the way South Africa was presented, and the South African story of Black South Africans defeating a system as hard, as difficult as apartheid. That was basically one of the things that kind of, pushed us. So South African music, South African culture. So that exposure eventually pushes one to say, I think when I get over there, so I wasn't alone. We had some friends that we came with to South Africa. They went to do the friendship because I knew that entrepreneurship is definitely an opportunity to freedom. So you don't have to depend on somebody to tell you what to do next day. So that's why I had to choose that route, because I'm coming from a very entrepreneurial family. My father was an entrepreneur. My mother was an entrepreneur. My siblings are all running their own businesses. So that's basically what made me come to South Africa, so that the dreams I've had for not just me, but the dreams for Africa as well. Because you need to understand as well South Africa's position in the big scheme of things. It is the most influential, it is the most powerful African nation, and being in South Africa kind of enables that to happen. So there's a lot of things that I'm doing here that I'm not able to do in Congo because Congo doesn't have those systems. And of course, as we learn from South Africa, as we learn from other countries across the globe, we want to make sure that we can also get these opportunities in other countries on the continent, including the Congo, where I'm coming from.
Okay. Yeah, and you probably touched on it already, Johnny. I love the way you reframe challenges and turn them into opportunities. So you touched on, your passion that you have for helping those from migrant communities and the disadvantaged. And I guess when you came over to South Africa, you'd have had some preconceived ideas about, the whole race divide and so on. But what are the maybe unique challenges have you found that have somehow stood you in good stead now in terms of the vision that you now have for Africa as a whole, that Pan-African dream?
The first thing for me, the first challenge I encountered was the language barrier. So I speak French. I come to South Africa. It's a country that speaks English. So I have ideas in French, but I cannot commit in English. So I had to actually force myself to understand and be able to communicate in English as a language. What I also did when I got here was not to go where everybody was going. Because when people come into South Africa, most of them, about 90%, they actually come to Johannesburg, where I am now. Others go to Cape Town. I went to Port Elizabeth, right? This is a place where people are saying to me, but where is that? So I went there. It gave me an opportunity to understand the culture. So that is the province where Nelson Mandela is coming from. right? It's the other side of South Africa. So I was there. I was exposed to the beauty of the South African culture. I was embraced. I was loved really by the people in that province. So just experiencing that love from South Africans made me, one, fall in love with the country, because what you get, basically you expand. The challenge is basically the legacy of the past is very much present, to the fact that a Black person, it doesn't matter how smart they are, you're always going to be doubted. And you need to remember that this is not coming only from white people, because white supremacy as a system is also adopted by Black people, because basically that system says only what is white is right, what is Black is not right. So any other person who looks like you, there's basically nothing good that can come from that particular person. And so we had to fight with the system, this system that basically dehumanized Black people for hundreds of years. So you can't change all of that overnight. But just by the way you think, when you get into these spaces where people actually, like right now, I'm in spaces that many people who are born here have never been into, right? Some will maybe even never get into these spaces. It is because I knew that I was given a gift by God, honestly, to break down these barriers, so that I don't want to be the only Black person in the room. Because there was a time in South Africa where there was kind of a lot of excitement. When you are the only Black person in the room, you are kind of excited. Now, when somebody comes and tells me that the only Black person in the room, they are the problem, because you actually are happy that that room is that way. So if somebody comes and says, I'm the only Black person to have done this, I'm the only Black person in the room, I'm like, you are the problem, because you're supposed to change that room and make sure that you introduce as many other people who look like you as possible. So that's basically what I've been doing, because I've got access. You can't set the table to eat alone. I have this access. I have these opportunities I've created. Now I am bringing other people along. I'm bringing young people. I'm bringing women. I'm bringing refugees, migrant people with disabilities. Basically, I truly believe that to whom much is given, much is required. So the legacy is very much present now. The unemployment that we're facing as a nation, inequality, poverty, and all of that. But I had to choose unemployment because I don't really know how to solve poverty. But once somebody has a job, that is one of the ways to actually address poverty. And of course, inequality as well. That's why in my own life mission around disrupting, injustice, challenging inequality, and inspiring an ambitious vision of what Africa can be, I want young people in Africa to see me, because you cannot become what you don't see. As they see a person who looks like them doing all of these things, as they see a person who looks like them being in meetings with prime ministers from the Netherlands, from the United Kingdom, meeting with heads of state. The president of South Africa was the president just in November of last year. So when people start to see this, they're like, wow, this is possible. If me, who's an outsider, I've been able to do this, you can do it too. That's basically, I want my life to be an example for people to follow.
Absolutely. Johnny, I remember on your profile, I don't know if it's still on there, it probably is, you had an interesting caption where you described yourself as the most creative person in Africa. That's a rather bold statement to make, if I may say so myself, Johnny. Please, how did that come about?
It is still there, and I am keeping it intentionally. I know that it kind of brings me trouble sometimes when people say, but why would you say that? Why would you say you're the most creative person in Africa? Have you met all the creatives in Africa? My answer has always been very simple. I don't have to meet all the creatives in Africa. I've met me. And because I've met me, I kind of know I'm a big deal. So that basically came when I went home, right? I went home. My brother passed away. I was home for a month, and it gave me so much time to just think about life, right? There's something that happens when somebody dies in the family, and I was very, very, very close to understand now mortality, because my brother, passed away. I started looking at me from a different perspective, because sometimes you need to remove yourself from what you are very familiar with. So by removing myself from South Africa, not intentionally, my brother died, I had to go home and bury him. I started looking at my life kind of a 360, like, okay, when people think about me, what should they remember about me? So I realized that actually I'm quite creative. I looked at the work actually that I've done in the creative space. I realized how I actually got into the film industry. I've never been to a film school. I just picked up a camera one day, started shooting. Years later, about 11 or 12 films were made. So I looked at all of these things that I've actually done and many challenges that eventually became, kind of launch pads of ideas in the marketplace. I was like, who is the most creative person in Africa? And I started basically checking up on people, reading up and looking at what other people have done. I realized that the bulk of the work that was done by creatives in the creative sector. It ended there. There was no crossover, right? Creatives are only in this particular box because the world is made up of boxes. And I realized that all the creatives I knew were in one box. Now I moved into the commerce side, basically with the Chamber of Commerce. Every person I know in this space who's an entrepreneur is in that box. They don't step outside of the box. I realized that actually I cross over. I can be here as a creative. I'm in the commerce space. I'm in the community space. So maybe I think I'm the most creative person in Africa because I understand culture, understand the economics of culture, understand innovation, entrepreneurship. I write, I direct, I produce. I sing. I'm Congolese. Music is basically like part of our DNA. So I looked at all of these things and say, is there any other person that I know who's like me? I couldn't find actually somebody who would actually cross over. So if you're speaking to creatives, it is just that box. They are very comfortable. When you try to take them out of that particular box into this side of trade, of commerce, they will basically be very angry with you because what are you doing? What they know how to do is to create, leave them alone. The same with people in this other side. Well, like, no, this is basically what I went to study. I'm fine here where I am. And I saw that, okay, I think I'm able to cross over from both ends. I think because of that, therefore, I am the most creative person in Africa. And also I looked at projects. I've got music project, film project, fashion project. I've done events, I've done fashion shows. And then I was like, I don't think there's anybody I know who has done as many things as me. I should just claim this title because one, nobody claimed it. I came up with this title. Now people are fighting me because I claimed it. So I'm like, guys, if nothing is taken, you take it.
I'm not surprised. You got it there first. Literally.
Yeah, definitely.
We have a thing over here in the UK, Johnny, finders keepers. If you find it first, nobody else has claimed it, it's yours.
That's right.
You can come and argue successfully. There's a reason why somebody else should take it. It's yours.
Most definitely.
I love the thinking. I love the thinking. That ability to, like you say, crossover, cross-pollinating, collaborating, stepping out of comfort zone. We can do all the C's, all the alliterations. But I think genuinely, I concur, that is what makes you unique. And, you've mentioned, I can't wait to come on to talk about the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce. You've mentioned all the various, spheres and fields that you're occupying right now for music, which I completely understand. As most Africans, music is in our DNA, but I think you Congolese people do take it to a whole other level. One of the reasons why I'm longing to come and visit the country. But yeah, you talk about music and the arts and writing and film producing and all of these things. And I'm trying to understand, Johnny, how did it go from that moment where, because not everyone is blessed with that ability to be able to, despite all these, multiple ideas whirling around in your mind, to be able to just encapsulate all of it and figure out that, okay, because I'm comfortable in all of these spaces, I understand that to grow means pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And now somehow evolving that into the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, which obviously is like the bedrock, because that's the global organization, the mother body, if you like. How and when did all that come about? Talk to us about the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce.
So the Pan-African Chamber as an idea came back in 2010, but it was only established in 2015. Because when I started looking into the problem of unemployment, especially of students from across the continent who come to study in South Africa, I realized that they actually were lacking a space, a platform that would give them that work experience. Because for South African companies, they don't really have incentives to have a student from Sierra Leone or from Kenya, become an intern in this particular company. I realized that I had to set up a platform like the Pan-African Chamber so that our members who are small businesses also, they don't have capacity. So we will get somebody who has studied at some of the best universities in the world to go and intern there. They will have to learn what's happening. They will acquire the work experience needed to become employable. Because if you go and look for a job, they will ask for experience. How can you get experience if there's no job, right? It's a chicken and egg situation. So that is basically the problem that the Pan-African Chamber was set up to establish. But I didn't want to just wake up one morning and then go and set up the chamber. I had to understand how chambers of commerce function. So the French ambassador, who was one of the invited guests at my event in 2010, when I went to present this problem to him, he then sent me to the French Chamber of Commerce in South Africa. So that's how I got into the chamber space. So by spending 5 years with the French Chamber as a paid up member, I got to understand how the chamber from inside, and trade missions were organized. And because I speak French, I speak English as well. That kind of made me visible within the French and eventually the European business community here. I saw that I needed a vehicle that could help me solve this particular problem of youth unemployment. That's why the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce was set up, because we're talking about an African problem that needed an African solution. So to come up with this solution, you needed to understand the African market, not just the South African market. Because South Africa, like I said earlier on, has the pull factors, but it can also have the push factors. So when you come in, you study at some of the best universities here, you can actually go to another country in Africa. You don't necessarily have to be here. You can work in Namibia if you study to be a mining engineer. If you study to be a lawyer, basically like you can go and work in Zimbabwe, basically because the education that people acquire in South Africa is kind of the most appreciated, if I have to put it that way, within the big scheme of things. It's an African level. So I saw that I needed a vehicle that would help me advance this agenda. But it was not just about the agenda of solving the problems we came across. It was also going to look at what is it that the African Union actually wants. The African Union has got the Agenda 2063. That's why within the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, we also designed the opportunity basically to support the AU Agenda for Youth, the African Agenda for Women, the African Agenda for Culture. That's why we are one of the few chambers of commerce working with the creative sector, because I'm a creative myself. When you speak to all the other chambers of commerce, whether speaking to the German chamber, the British chamber will tell you to go to the British Council. The German chamber will tell you to go to Goethe Institute. The French chamber will tell you to go to Alliance Française. But I saw this gap and I said to myself, you know what? If no chambers of commerce want to do anything with the creative and cultural space, I want to step into that space. That's basically how we came in as a chamber, because when you say, I am from a chamber of commerce, people respond differently. People respect you because they understand what a chamber of commerce is supposed to be. So in South Africa, we've got local chambers, like here in Johannesburg, there's the Johannesburg Chamber of Commerce, there's the Durban Chamber in Durban, there's the Cape Chamber in Cape Town. They are promoting investment in those particular cities. With the Pan-African Chamber, we are saying to investors in Africa and outside that Africa is open for business, the whole of Africa. So we don't only promote just South Africa, because legally we are a South African organization. We are also an American organization registered in the US 3 years ago. We are saying that the entire African continent is open for business. So we can speak about investment in Kenya. We can speak about investment in Nigeria. We can speak about investment in Morocco. We can speak about investment in South Africa itself or in Zimbabwe next door. So I was looking at setting up a platform that would allow me to do all of these things. And that is exactly what the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce has done and more. so that other entities are now coming from the chamber and they're helping me achieve our objectives of connecting the continent together.
Fantastic. Johnny, I think perhaps at this stage we really should give a quick shout out to Claudine Reed, MBA, who is an amazing individual over here doing some fantastic work. And had it not been for Claudine, Johnny and I would not have met. So
exactly.
At a business conference that she organized about 2 years ago, in fact, and Johnny was one of her esteemed guests on that platform. And we all met him, myself and other delegates got to meet Johnny on the big screen. We felt like we were sitting in front of him live in the Johnny Masterclass session that was kindly hosted by Claudine. And, you know, we're all just fascinated by this concept, the idea of having a chamber of commerce, but the Pan-Africanism, you know, elements behind it. Because many have come and gone, Johnny, as you know, who have had that dream to unite Africa, to, you know, capitalize on the richness and the resources that we have in that continent, but yet somehow we always seem to fall short. So I guess my question, Johnny, is in terms of where it started, you've just described the genesis, you know, wanting to create opportunities for youngsters, getting out of that chicken and egg situation, you know. From that point to where you are now, how do you feel the Chamber of Commerce has been evolving, progressing?
That's a very good question. So in 2024, I went on a radio station here in South Africa, and I was asked a question similar to this one you're asking. They were saying to me, so you started the chamber back in 2015? I said, yes. And it is going to turn 10 years in 2025. Yeah. So what would the next 10 years of the chamber look like? I mean, you know, there's those kind of questions you are not prepared, but immediately something actually kind of clicked. My answer was that over the next 10 years, the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce is going to become for businesses in Africa what the African Union is to government in Africa, but primarily small businesses. We are very intentional. Why do I have such a passion for small businesses? Because they have the capacity to help solve the problem we have, primarily the problem of youth unemployment. So to give you the numbers, every single year, about 10 million young people graduate and only 3 million. And these numbers were before COVID. So we don't know how the picture looks like now. They sit at home after acquiring the education that was promised to them, that after education, you can basically have your life to yourself. You can have a job so that you can look after yourself. You can look after your family. There's a lot of young people in Africa who are living these dreams, lives basically of unfulfilled dreams. So I saw that there. So over the last 11 years, we started by connecting these entrepreneurs together. We help entrepreneurs, we hold their hands and give them access to markets. So as a chamber, we do 3 key things. We give entrepreneurs access to skills, access to market, access to capital. In fact, we are about to launch a project with Amazon here in South Africa to empower women who are selling products to be plugged into the Amazon platform in South Africa. So we're starting in Johannesburg, in Durban, in Cape Town. This week, I met with Amazon to discuss how this project actually is going to be rolled out. So we are not going to stop as a chamber. We have done well, but we believe that there is so much, much, much more. A former South African president, President Thabo Mbeki, said, after climbing a great hill, you discover there are more hills to climb still, right? So we have kind of arrived here 11 years later. Is this all? No, actually it's not. There is still so much more to be done, but we can't do it just on our own. We need to expand. We need to bring more people on board. That's why now the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce is setting up a university called Sankofa University, a digital-first Pan-African university, because the problem I encountered 11 years ago, actually, no, 16 years ago, let me say, those problems have not changed, where people go and study, they sit at home. So I realized that we need a special purpose vehicle here that will empower as many people as possible. And you rightfully said, yeah, many people started, and basically we've not seen what this movement of Pan-Africanism has achieved. To the credit of Africans in the diaspora, the Pan-African movement was born in the UK where you are, and in the Caribbean. in the main. There was a Pan-African conference in Manchester in 1945. 1945, think about that. There was a Pan-African conference in London in 1902. 1902, think about that, right? But what has that movement become, especially from the United Kingdom perspective? We want to make sure that the next phase of the Pan-African movement should be about economic emancipation, because the first phase of this movement was about political freedom, because the whole of Africa was under colonialism, actually, 1902, 1945, when the United Nations was established. We had that event. But if we thought like the people who set up the United Nations, look at where the UN is today. That is exactly where the Pan-African movement would have been. But because there was a lot of forces against us, there's nothing you can do when politically you are not free. That's why the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, would always say, seek ye first political freedom, and everything else will come in. We have that political freedom. They've done their part. Now our generation need to usher in economic freedom. Now, economic freedom doesn't come alone. It comes with mental freedom. We have to elevate the consciousness of our masses, because there's a lot of people who are still wanting us divided, divided based on the colors of our passport, based on where we're coming from, based on the languages we speak, based on the regions, based on our faith and religion and sexual orientation. All of these things are happening, but there has to be a group of people crazy enough to think they can unite Africa. And like they say, those who are crazy enough to think they can change the world eventually end up changing the world. So for me, I stepped down as a CEO of the chamber. We have a new CEO who is an American, who's based in America, because the Pan-African movement, people actually don't understand. It didn't start here. It didn't start here. It started outside. So we want to make sure that we are able to keep us united, because united, definitely we succeed. Divided, we fail. Divided, we fall, actually, also. So that's why I feel like Pan-Africanism need kind of a new energy of some sort, and it had to spread across. That's why through Sankofa University, we are able to provide training, because Sankofa is about looking back to take what was forgotten, what was left behind. We can do that as well from an economic development perspective. We need to be proud of our culture, our heritage, and many people of African descent actually have what I call the identity crisis, because they don't know where they're coming from. They honestly don't know. So we want to make sure that we are able, as a chamber and Sankofa University and other platforms, to help them understand where they're coming from, because memory is the fabric of identity. Now, if that memory was actually kind of cut off, you will see that you are feeling like a tree without roots. That's basically what happens, and can't be productive. So that's what we are also doing, as we are empowering people to acquire skills that will make them employable, the 21st century skills. We want to make sure that we are also able to help them understand their culture, where they're coming from.
Johnny, for the viewers, Sankofa, please, the meaning.
Sankofa comes from a Nakan language in Ghana. It simply means looking back. It speaks about going back to take what was forgotten, going back to take what was left behind. At the core of this philosophy is the capacity to learn from the past to make a better future. The argument actually is that the past shapes the present and informs the future. There is no, you shouldn't plan going anywhere if you don't know where you are coming from. That's why for years and years, I have to tell you that I was struggling with the name of this university, with the name, until this one. From around 2018, this isn't a new idea. When I got this name, I'm like, but this is it. It basically has everything. And I always get asked this question, so how far back are you going to go? I'm like, I'm going as far back as the beginning of humankind, because humanity started here. The sort of Africa did not start with enslavement of our people. 1619 were taken to the Americas. It didn't start with colonialism. It didn't start with the Berlin Conference of 1865. Humanity started here. So we need to make peace with the fact that we gave birth to humanity, and we have to walk with pride, with pride. That is basically the reason why it is so important to go back, literally, because science basically said, yeah, the first human beings started in Africa is an African. So we were the first humans to think, right? The first in the world to think. So how do you then take that knowledge and use it as a launch pad to how you walk in the world, how you behave, how you see yourself? So that's the reason why Sankofa is this important. And having this coming from Ghana, a country that has been very instrumental in bringing about freedom across the continent, because Nkrumah said that the freedom of Ghana is meaningless until it is linked to the total emancipation of Africa. So you can see, and having something come out of that nation makes me very, very proud of being an African.
For sure. Johnny, my goodness, your passion is infectious. You can see why, like I mentioned earlier, the first meeting, when I met Johnny 2 years ago on Claudine Reed's platform, you can see why when we had a conversation offline soon after that meeting, and Johnny put the idea to me about coming on board and, collaborating, working with him on the Pan-Africa Chamber of Commerce, I could not say no. Discussing earlier about, there's so much synergy between the two of us as creatives. And although there's distance, it almost doesn't matter because there are spaces that I'm accessing that, but for the distance, Johnny would be accessing too, and vice versa. I also happen to be extremely passionate about the motherland, where my forefathers come from. And so, when he approached me about being an advocate for the Chamber of Commerce and using my presenting podcasts and skills to do work for the Pan-Africa TV, I could not say no. I share the vision. I understand completely. There were so many nuggets there, Johnny. You talk a lot about having a mentality of divided we stand, united we stand, divided we fall. And you were talking about the mindset as well. We have to renew our mind in order to be able to understand the power of looking back, understand the power of, who we are as individuals. And another thing that just popped into my head, as the great singer Bob Marley once said, emancipation, freedom. The words were going in my head just now. Now it's just gone. Where he talks about freeing your mind. That's where it's at. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery.
Yes.
And sadly, as you alluded earlier, Johnny, the whole Black is not right mentality, it's not just with other races. Sadly, we ourselves suffer with that. And what you're trying to achieve with the work you do, this is why it's so admirable, because you're trying to turn all of this on its head. A lot of those problems start with us. And unless we can start to see for ourselves and have a mindset renewal, mind reset, and all of these things, it's going to be very difficult for us to achieve what we're trying to achieve. We can see the goals, but if those obstacles are still in the way, then it's a problem. And I think underpinning everything that you're saying, what I'm picking up is the difference with your vision as a Pan-Africanist is the longevity aspect. This is not a flash in the pan exercise. This is something that is going to endure for generations, right?
Most definitely. So what Frantz Fanon says, he says that every generation needs to discover its mission. And once you discover your mission, two things will happen. It's either you fulfill that mandate or you betray it, right? So we need to fulfill this mandate of our generation. Our mission, that is generational, is around economic emancipation, total economic emancipation, empowerment of our continent, of our people, both here at home and abroad where you are. But also, quite importantly, Simone, I think we've not given culture its rightful place. We think culture is a nice to have. The reason why the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce drives the African agenda for culture is basically because before you do business with somebody, you need to know them. And culture is how you get to know somebody. What is culture? Culture is the way of doing things, right? You can know somebody's culture by tasting their food, right? I love Ethiopian food a lot. And when I travel to Ethiopia, I tend to actually gain a lot of weight because I eat a lot of it. So that's how you get to know somebody's culture. So when you eat jollof rice from Nigeria or from Ghana, you are actually eating a piece of that culture. That's the reason why, through the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, I believe that culture is our ticket to the future. That's the reason why now with the Pan-African Chamber, we are planning to host the Pan-African Music Award in the United Kingdom, in London, where you are.
Right.
The reason why we're doing that is basically because a lot of African artists struggle to access market, so accessing market for a number of reasons. Visas are denied, they don't have money. Even here in Africa, I have to tell you honestly that it is mainly European governments that are helping African artists to move within Africa. The French government, number one, followed by the British government, followed by the German government. So in that order, by the way, I don't really know what other countries are doing, but primarily France, the UK, and Germany, and also the US. We don't really know what the US is doing right now, but you can see that even within the continent, the mobility of African artists is actually funded by the European Union and European countries, primarily France, Germany, and also the United Kingdom as well. So we want to make sure that through the Pan-African Music Awards that will also in the UK this year, we are giving African artists access to this global marketplace because it is a very, very important market. African music is big right now. African artists are filling up venues and concert halls and stadiums all over the world, by the way. So we now need to learn how to monetize on our cultural heritage. How do we make money out of this? How do we make millionaires out of this? We need to find talent that is sitting all across Africa, that is sitting across the diaspora where you are. We need to manage them. We need to show them the opportunities to come here, do exchange programs, go into studios, record songs, record albums with artists from the continent, artists from North America, artists from the Caribbean. That is what we should do. Nobody else is going to do this for us. We have to make sure that this happens so that we bring the world together through the culture of Africa, basically with our music.
Absolutely, absolutely. Johnny, I can't wait to press in a little bit more into that aspect, but I do have to point out that until you try jollof rice from Sierra Leone, you do realize that you haven't really done it. But we're not.
I have to try.
There yet.
I have to try. I'm open all the time.
Good. I knew you would be because your mind is on a whole other level, but we'll save that for another day. Johnny, the decision to host the Pan-African Music Awards over here, no doubt was a strategic one. Just talk me a little bit through that, how that all came about.
So for the longest of time, we were actually supposed to do this project in 2020. So I blame myself. This initiative was supposed to happen in 2018. I said, let's wait until the chamber celebrates 5 years. So for an organization set up in 2015, 5 years was going to fall in 2020. And we know what happened in 2020, COVID. The world was basically shut down. So I've always been thinking, what is the aim of this particular initiative? Why do we need a music awards, by the way, at a continental level? So through this African agenda for music, we looked at access to music, advocacy, education, export, equity, exchange, investment, and infrastructure. I realized that export is basically the heartbeat of any industry for that matter. So the mobility. So you're making stuff here, people consume it over there. So it makes sense that the Pan-African Music Awards need to start outside of Africa. As it starts outside of Africa, it is going to be able to mobilize the people of African descent outside of Africa because they are a big number that is the capacity to buy. They buy in pounds and euros and dollars. That's why it makes sense that we are able to export, right? We export a lot. Congo, I'm coming from, has got almost all the minerals in the world. Talking about Sierra Leone, there's mining literally all across the continent. But how much of that do we get as Africans? how much of that do we get? But you can see that through culture, if we don't organize ourselves, other people are going to step in and they're going to do exactly what they're doing to the other minerals, to our cultural heritage. That's why I have stepped in as a person actually who's very much invested in music, coming from a country that is so rich culturally that we are able now to export. So the Pan-African Music Award is an opportunity to export African culture through the language of music, so that every single person who loves African music, who loves African people, because sometimes you find people, they love our culture, but they don't love us, right? So we now need to start now building this audience to say, you don't have to come to South Africa. You'll go there at some point, but we are bringing this project over here. What do you have as an artist, as a British artist of African descent? We want to make sure that we are building this global ecosystem so that you have an opportunity as well to come back to the continent. So that's basically the plan. It's an economic decision. It's definitely a cultural decision, most definitely, to globalize African culture. I believe that our culture, we are the people who brought culture to the world. I mean, look at that. But how much are we making from that particular culture? Our contribution globally to the creative economy sits at about 2%. It's actually below 2%. So what we want to do as a chamber, through the Pan-African Music Award, through the Hollywood African Film Festival, through the many events we're going to be organizing, is that by 2035, basically 9 years to go, we want to contribute to about 5%. So how do we do that? By giving people access to African culture, African music in this case. So that's why taking the Pan-African Music Award to London was a very smart move, number one. But of course, as a leader, there will be people who actually are going to say, but why are you starting over there instead of starting here? I will then ask them, what is the ultimate aim? What is the goal? Because you must always begin with the end in mind, right? Once you begin with the end in mind, the noise that people are making now will actually not affect you because you see what the end looks like. So I have seen that end, and I can tell you that, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who says, I've been to the mountaintop, and I know for sure it is glorious. That's why we now need to make sure that as leaders, because you see the way, you walk the way, but also being patient with the people you are leading, because they will not all see. I see 20 years in the future. I see 30 years. In fact, that's what we're supposed to do as leaders. But you're also patient to show people that this is where we're going. So starting in the UK, very strategic. London, one of the most influential cities in the world, with so much culture, with people from all across the globe. We want to actually carve ourselves a space in the British cultural agenda from an economic development perspective that we are also going to be contributing to the economy of the world through our music.
Right. Johnny, I want to ask you a bit of a wild card question. Speaking about music and culture, two things as well that I'm very passionate about, especially when it comes to music. So bear with me, if an alien were to land on planet Earth, bump into you and ask you specifically, what is it you feel about African music? And we can draw down to certain genres like Afrobeats. There's another one, I forget the name now, something house, African house music. African music, there's something about it that's just irresistible. When it seeps into your soul, you can't help but, even certain gospel music has now incorporated elements of Afrobeats. There's a song, for instance, right now that I can't get enough of. It's called Omema by an artist called Chandler Moore. You may or may not have heard of it.
An American, yeah.
Yeah. I just find it, I hear it and I literally lose the plot. How would you describe that, the essence of African music to somebody who just doesn't get it?
Thank you so much. The essence of African music, to anybody who doesn't get it, the first thing actually is to listen to African music. It doesn't matter the language, right? There's Afrobeat in Nigeria, there's Amapiano from South Africa, there's Rumba from the DRC. There is many kind of types of genres of music across our continent. But the first thing actually for me, the essence of African music is African culture. It is our culture that drives our music. It drives everything. It is authenticity. African culture is about originality. We are not copying anybody. And I've heard people who say, you're copying, you are. We started everything here. Humanity started here. So what we are giving is actually the birthplace of culture. That's what I truly believe that our music is giving the world. There is going to be a time in our time now, our generation, that if you don't collaborate with an African artist, you are out. You are left behind, right? If you don't collaborate with an African artist, it is going to be a trend, like we saw many artists from all over the world wanting to collaborate with American artists. The time for Africa is actually now. So instead of that time to take about a decade or so, I am going to make sure that we accelerate that so that more and more people are exposed to the beauty, the richness, the worth of our culture through our music. So the essence of African music is originality. The essence of African music is basically authenticity, but also very importantly, the essence of African music is our culture. Our culture literally speaks of humanity, speaks of Ubuntu, that says, I am because you are. There is no other culture in the world that behaves and thinks that way. Steve Biko, who was killed, he assassinated in 1977, said that the West has given the world the face of technology, but Africa is going to give the world a human face. So what African music is doing in this case is giving the world a human face. That face that is primarily, authentically African.
Sure is. And I would just add to that, I think it also, I mean, it's hard to imagine what I would feel, emotions that it would evoke, etc., if I wasn't an African, because obviously I get it, it's innate, right? But I would also add that it sparks curiosity. So for people from other races, breeds and so on, I can't imagine listening to African music for the first time, like youngsters who go to university, they hear it and they're not curious about, whoa, I need to check out Africa. Where is this country? Where is this music coming from? Which country? I've got to go see for myself and feel it and experience it for myself. That's, I think, another powerful thing about things like having the Pan-African Music Awards being held here, the way we're now going to be able to transport swathes, generations of people, their mind, their thinking onto that continent.
And it's not just the awards, Simone. There is so much. The music industry is so broad, right? There are so many aspects, literally, from eventing, merchandising, marketing, branding, comms, content production, videos, all of that. It's a multi-billion industry. So imagine now that being set up over there. The award will happen once per year, but there will be festivals we're going to organize during the course of the year, not only in the United Kingdom, across Europe, North America, the Caribbean, Latin America, here in Africa as well. So it is I was very intentional, I have to tell you that, to just say, you know what, based on the conversations also I had with the UK Department for Business and Trade, we had a meeting with them at the Bloomberg Africa Business Summit in November here in Johannesburg before B20. We spoke. This lady was like, yeah, let's do this. There's a lot actually that can be done. So that's why. And I was now on this week, on Wednesday, I was at the British High Commissioner's house in Cape Town. It was an amazing opportunity also to engage, to see how do we plug into this space. The UK is known for music. There's so much talent there. That industry is worth billions and billions. So we want to plug into a very well-developed ecosystem. The problem we're facing here as a continent, I have to say, Simone, the infrastructure is not developed enough, right? Societies that are supposed to collect revenues, we don't have many of them. South Africa is the only country, maybe a few other countries, that have developed this ecosystem. It's coming, of course, from the legacy of the past. So we want to help develop the music industry ecosystem from Cape to Cairo. But you don't have to do this on our own. We can learn from the United Kingdom. We can learn from the US. We don't have to start everything here basically through trial and error. Let's learn from what exists. Let's copy. I always say this. China started by copying everybody. China is now ahead of everybody. Let's copy the systems, the infrastructure that exists over there. Let's bring that now to Congo. My country of birth does not have a society that is actually able to collect up to this very day. And I know that people are trying and trying and trying. Without infrastructure, you can't develop an economy. You cannot, unfortunately. So we would love to learn. And of course, there's things we are coming to contribute as well. We want to make sure that we can learn, see what is there, and ask for help. Ask from British film, musicians and people in the music ecosystem to say, please help us. We would love to partner to set something in Lesotho, to set something in Botswana. There's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in wanting to learn. It is basically pride and arrogance that makes people to say, there's nothing anybody can teach me. No, that's arrogance, literally. And you are going to fall. The Bible says pride comes before fall. Yeah, if you are proud, you are falling tomorrow and you are failing as well. So we want to learn and come and say, please show us how you have done this. You need to remember, we were colonized. When we were colonized, they were building. We were not, right? Colonization was extraction. They were taking literally everything from us. We could not even make films. Do you understand that? Making films in Africa started when independence came. When was that? When was that? You see? So we are coming in 100 years later.
Absolutely, on the back.
100, more than 100 years late. So we have to be humble enough to say, we want to learn. We are not here to fight. We are there to learn. That's the reason why the Pan-African Music Award coming to London specifically, people are asking me, so how long will it be there? I don't know. It might be there for the next 5 years. It might be there for the next 7 years. I don't know. But for now, all the roads lead to London. Let's start there. And then we'll decide where next to go from there.
I completely get it. It's a smart move. It's a strategic move. And I think, the way you break it down, Johnny, it's only fair. We're on the back foot and we are catching up. And I think really intelligent people, not the ignorant, will get it and will understand that, well, yeah, if we're all on this race together, we're all trying to get to the enlightened promised land, right? Why would
most definitely
our brothers and sisters here not want to help us get on that boat? It makes sense. Why reinvent the wheel? If it's already been done, they've already done the tried and tested. We don't need to go through all that aggro and wahala. So I have to commend you on that decision, Johnny, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I saw something very funny on Wednesday night at the High Commissioner's house. We're standing on the queue, actually going to take the food. And this guy a guy from Ghana, of all places, turns to me. He was accompanied by this lady and is asking me, like, what do you do? What brought you to this event? And blah, blah, blah. I tell him about the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce. And I say to him, yeah, it's set up here, set up in the US. Now we're planning to set it up in the UK. Listen to the question. A guy from Ghana is asking me. He said, the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce in the UK. Why? Listen to that question. I'm like, is that a question or something? He's like, yeah, but why? Isn't the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce supposed to be here? But I didn't have time to school him, to actually tell him that Pan-Africanism started in the United Kingdom. You see, but I didn't have time. I'm like, okay, this one is ignorant. Let me just leave him. But I didn't have time to say this movement started. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, look, this actually started in the United Kingdom and in the Caribbean, right? George Padmore, this is a guy from the Caribbean who built this movement in Manchester in the United Kingdom. There's many of these Pan-Africanists, Marcus Garvey and others basically were part of this movement, early on. So I'm like, yeah, you are the reason why I'm doing this thing. So you can't be asking me in 2026, what is the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce doing in the United Kingdom?
Yeah.
I really, dude, come on. But I just said to him, don't worry, it will make sense to you. Yeah, you'll understand.
But I mean, as we wind down, Johnny, I have to say, not just your drive and your passion, but it's also, I think, your makeup and your personality that kind of blesses you with that patient streak. And you alluded to that earlier, which is that, you have the ability to have gone to the mountaintop. So you've already seen that it is good and it is beautiful. And obviously, people who haven't quite climbed or ascended there yet not necessarily physically, but spiritually, emotionally, to get the vision. Will take some time to get there. And you see it upon yourself. The onus is on the likes of you, us, part of this movement, the commerce, setup that we have going, to bring people into the light. We're trying to make the vision plain. And I think that ultimately is what makes you successful at what you're doing. It has to be said.
Most definitely. So having you in the United Kingdom is an advantage. And also having people sitting in the US, it's an amazing advantage because I'm not omnipresent, only God is. God can be everywhere or at the same time. So having you there means that there's a lot of things I cannot do on the ground that you can do. So what I'm supposed to do now is just to enable you, with your background in the legal profession. This industry deals a lot with intellectual property. We do need to know exactly how do we protect people's ideas, people's innovation, so that they're not robbed. So I believe that the timing is everything. The United Kingdom is taking over from the US when it comes to G20 this year in December. That's an opportunity. South Africa hosted G20 in 2025. The US is hosting this year. So what we are going to do between now and November, there is going to be a series of events. In June, South by Southwest is in London. An amazing opportunity for us to plug in. So the UK Department for Business and Trade told me, they're like, we are organizing an Africa moment during South by Southwest. We would love to partner with your chamber. Come, let's do something. Come, let's do something. If you want the award to happen in June, it should happen there. I was like, oh, no, June is just around the corner. I don't want to speak to sponsors. And they're like, dude, you want to raise all this money in 4 months? What's wrong with you? But November gives us enough time to breathe. And it's the first edition. And it's not happening in Africa. It's happening in Europe. Now there's a lot of other things to consider as well. So having you on the ground, you are literally the face because you are an executive in the chamber. You are based there. It becomes very easy for us now to start building from there, connecting with what's happening over here. So that's the reason why we're starting with music. We're not going to end with music. We are bringing film into that space. We're bringing fashion. We know the first ones. We want to be the best ones. Honestly, can't be if you're not the first, you should be the best. So that's basically my vision. I look at things that way to say, okay, if I didn't start it, I can come up with that's what innovation is about. It's also finding a new way of doing things. People can do the same thing over and over again, but until there's a new way of looking at things, we are always going to be going in circles. So I want to change that and utilize the advantage, the opportunity of a brand called United Kingdom to amplify the work I want to do in music in that space.
Yeah. And don't forget, Johnny, I'm a Pan-Africanist like yourself, but currently, yes, I'm stationed in the UK, but I have a foothold in the US as well. In fact, I'll be traveling back there in a few days' time. Very briefly, Johnny, you're also involved with the Atlanta Black Chamber of Commerce. Just tell us briefly about that interface and how that all informs the work that you do.
So I was appointed in 2023 to be the country manager for the Atlanta Black Chambers of Commerce. That's where I met the amazing Claudine, who connected us, by the way. So my job as the country manager for South Africa is to connect Black businesses that are based in the greater Atlanta area with Africa via South Africa and vice versa. So we do organize trade missions. We advise the businesses over there that we share opportunities. Right now, there's an opportunity in the healthcare space. I am opening clinics, right? I want to see how then do we plug in. This is an opportunity that came through the Atlanta Black Chambers of Commerce. I truly believe that the power of all of these entities lies in our ability to collaborate. So people who are sitting in Atlanta, they don't have the knowledge of Africa like I do because I'm here, and vice versa. So that's my job. The Atlanta Black Chambers of Commerce is really to connect entrepreneurs, but also share ideas and also help entrepreneurs from South Africa to access the US market through Atlanta. Basically, every single year, we organize the Go Global Conference in Atlanta. I am trying to see whether we can also bring that conference here. Also the universities, because I'm setting up Sankofa University. I'm also looking at universities like Morehouse, in Atlanta, Georgia Tech, that we can also collaborate with. It will go beyond the chamber. It will also get you to the education, media, entertainment. Atlanta is known as the Hollywood of the South. So we do also want to make sure that we can connect filmmakers from Atlanta. And luckily for us, the mayor of Atlanta is really, really committed. He wants Atlanta to become the gateway to Africa. And he was here in 2024. He was here last year. He really means business. And that's basically what we're doing. There's a lot that can still be done, but a step at a time will basically lead us to greater things.
That is amazing. Johnny, I think, it has to be said, you just have this phenomenal ability to multitask so many ideas and concepts seamlessly. I mean, there's a Pan-African element, there's a pan-world kind of ethos that you just embody. You see no limits, you see no bounds, and it's amazing. It really is. But just to round up, I mean, I am curious, I'm sure the viewers are as well, in terms of what's keeping you super busy. So obviously the Pan-African Music Awards, yes, we know that all roads lead to London in November. But just over the next 6 to 12 months, just to kind of give us an idea in terms of where your energy is also focusing right now, what's currently keeping Johnny awake at night?
Oh, thank you so much. What is keeping me awake at nights right now is film. I'm in the middle of a production right now. So there's a German-South African co-production that I've actually embarked on. There is also a platform called Afriwood. Afriwood is for Africa what Hollywood is for America, what Bollywood is for India, what Nollywood is for Nigeria. It is basically keeping me up at night. Afriwood is going to be based in Cape Town for now. It is going to become this Pan-African film collective that basically makes it easy for people of African descent from all over the globe to convene in Cape Town. So I do want to make sure that Cape Town becomes the global mecca of Black culture, and eventually Johannesburg as well. I grew up here. Apart from that, there's a Pan-African Fashion Week that we're also planning here in South Africa. So I've got designers ready, a lot of things, actually, a lot of moving pieces. But lastly, and very importantly, Sankofa University. Under the structure of the university, last year in September, we launched the Women Entrepreneurship Centers in partnership with a bank here called Nedbank. Secondly, we are busy right now setting up an African business school. I've got associates from Mauritius. We are working on the curriculum. After the Pan-African Business School, we've got the Pan-African Medical School and Pan-African clinics. We have 4 mobile clinics right now that are going to be dispatching across South Africa. 4, we've got the Africa Development Agency, an entity within Sankofa as a university. All of these things are powered by the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce. We are looking at development through an African eye. We then have the Africa Institute of Technology. There is MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the US. There's AIT, the one we are setting up here. And then apart from that, we've got the Pan-African Studios. So under Pan-African Studios, this is where you come in with Pan-African TV. And funny enough, when you and I started talking, we were not really sure, where do we set up Pan-African TV? Do we set up Pan-African TV in South Africa? Do we set up in the US? Do we set up in the UK? But seeing what's going on in the US right now, we decided actually that Pan-African TV will be headquartered in London. That's the plan now. Because you need a place where, there's a lot of things happening there better than compared to other places. So that's what I'm busy working on now. So it is around putting contents together. And of course, lastly, how can I forget? My book is coming out. The book is titled Changing the African Narrative. I've been lazy. The book was written about a year ago. It's coming out finally. It is going to be more than a book. It is going to become a movement that is going to help shape change the way the world sees us, but also the way we see ourselves. Because Ben Okri, one of my favorite Nigerian authors, who's actually based there in the UK, he says a people are as healthy and confident as the stories they tell themselves. Now, if you want to understand that very well, you will see that the stories we tell ourselves are not coming from us. So we need to actually break that pattern. So we need to start telling ourselves stories of success, not just stories of oppression, not just stories of enslavement, not just stories of colonialism, because the story of Africa is the oldest in the world. You see? So, and until we change the stories we're telling ourselves, we are not going to change. So these are things that are keeping me up at night. It is to change the way the world looks at Africa. And Nelson Mandela, one of my heroes, says, it always seems impossible until it is done. People say to me, are you crazy? I'm like, yep, I'm very happy to be crazy. But I know that what I'm working on now is going to change. The continent is going to change, not just by me alone, but by empowering people across the globe and collaborating as well with everybody, including you, in the UK where you are and in the US as well, where we spend time.
It's an honor, and I'm happy to be part of that crazy movement, just for the record. So you can come back and remind me in a few years' time. Simone, you remember when you said? Johnny, I just want to end with a quote here. What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life that we lead. And that was a quote by Nelson Mandela, which Johnny had at the top of his bio that he sent to me. Johnny, final parting thoughts. What does that quote mean to you?
The quote means what you do for yourself dies with you. What you do for others lives way beyond you, right? Even after you're gone. So I don't want to measure my life based on what I'm doing for myself. Literally, I measure the impact. Like, why am I here? Did I achieve anything? As I look around and see 1 million young people who can code in Africa, my job is done. As I look across the continent, 1 million women who are given the tools to trade globally, my job is done. As I look into the diaspora in the United Kingdom where you are, and I see young people of African descent in North America, the US where you're going, who are so proud of their culture, their love where they're coming from, my job is done. So I will measure my success not based on how many cars I have. You can only drive one car at a time. There's not one person in this world who can basically drive 5 cars. Even if you've got 20 of them, you can only drive one. If you've got 20 houses, you can only sleep in one. What's the point, by the way? Unless you buy cars for other people and you buy houses for other people, what you do for you dies with you. But what you do for other people remains for generations. So we want to plant trees and knowing very well we are not going to sit under the shadow of that particular tree. That's basically what this is my favorite quote by Mandela. This one, this is my favorite. He has so many, but this one, I'm like, I think this is the one. So I've kind of based my entire life on what Mandela said there, that you can measure the quality of life by the difference you've made in the lives of other people.
Powerful, powerful. That is a highly inspirational, motivational note on which to conclude. Johnny, I can talk to you for hours and hours and hours. This has been an incredible honor. Thank you so much for gracing this space, for coming on my channel and sharing your ideas, your vision, your mission. It's been an absolute pleasure. And again, just to put on the record, Johnny, I am thrilled and honored to be partnering with you, to be walking this path, this journey with you in terms of, what we're trying to individually and, as a unit, as a team, try to achieve. The vision is strong. The mission is a compelling one. And as we've discussed several times during this podcast, united we stand, divided we fall. And whatever we can do to share that knowledge with other people, and as you say, hold their hands and guide them to see what is beyond the mountain, we just keep doing it.
Definitely. Thank you so much for inviting me. And please put in your diary, there's a number of events we're going to be attending, organizing in the UK where you are. We will be going to India as well this year. The BRICS conference is happening in India. Definitely we have to be in the US for the G20 summit at the end of the year. Some event we're doing in Egypt, event in South Africa. So I will share with you the calendar for the year, not just the event we are bringing there to London. The most important event we have for the year is primarily the Pan-African Music Award, because that closes the year for us in style. So I will share with you more. And then, yeah, I'll see you on Wednesday. I would love for you to be on the call on Wednesday, this coming week, to discuss the logistics for the award in London and other things as well.
No problem, no problem. One last question, Johnny. I mean, obviously we'll have a conversation offline. Please, people who would like to get in contact, connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. So that's the easiest way to connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn, Johnny Muteba. My email address is johnny@panafricanchamber.com. That's the main mode of communication. I'm on Instagram, but I'm not really an Instagram person. Facebook also, I'm not. But basically, LinkedIn is a place to reach out to me. My email address, always respond to emails. In fact, tomorrow, we have a meeting with somebody from Azerbaijan who just reached out to me. She's like, I've set up this Africa-Azerbaijan Economic Council. I want to speak with you to partner. Sure. Talking tomorrow, right? So there is a lot of these conversations that are coming. Lithuania, I met somebody from Lithuania in Cape Town who said to me, we want to partner with chambers of commerce, but we don't even know where to start. I'm like, start here, just start here. Everything is going to be fine. So the British government, the Department for Business and Trade, they want to expand the British chambers of commerce in Southern Africa. They asked me, can we partner with you? I'm like, I'm here. Come on, I'm here. I will not say no to anything. I mean, it's kind of the year of yes that Shonda Rhimes was talking about. This is our year of yes as a chamber. Sure. Let's go.
Sure. No, indeed. Johnny, thank you so much. I will share those details in the blurb below so people can, reach out if they wish. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simone. We'll talk soon.
For sure.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.